Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Heading into the end of January, that transfer portal window largely starting to wind down. Many of y'all know what that means. You start to flip your attention to what these programs are doing on the recruiting trail. The Florida Gators are wasting zero time, getting very aggressive in the 2026 class. And what should excite the Florida Gator fans the most, this could be a fun next couple of months for Florida on the recruiting trail. Right, 12 months ago, the future of this program was very murky. Everybody just wanted to talk about Billy Napier being on the hot seat. That's a really hard situation to be in when you're trying to go out there on the recruiting trail and try to get kids to commit to your program for the next 3 to 4 years, when all anybody wants to talk about is Billy Napier, the head coach, being on the hot seat. There seems to be a little bit more clarity around this program. And then you look at a guy like DJ Lagway and say, hey, Florida has every chance in the world with DJ at quarterback to win at the highest level in the SEC. I think, secondly, look at Florida towards the end of 2024. Yes, they were winning a lot of football games. They looked like one of the more dangerous teams that we saw in the entire country. Who were the guys that were playing a big role in that Florida Gators team? DJ Lagway, Jaden Baugh, Miles Graham, a bunch of young kids. So if you're a kid that's going into their senior year of high school, finishing their junior year, looking at this program saying, I'm looking at Florida win some massive games in the SEC in the month of November with kids that are 1 or 2 years older than me playing a massive role, that's really attractive to these young kids on the recruiting trail. So I look at Florida this year over the next 3 to 4 months on the recruiting trail with all these visits getting scheduled and say, this could be a really fun next couple of weeks and months for Florida on the recruiting trail, significantly more fun than it was 12 months ago when all everybody wanted to talk about was Billy Napier on the hot seat. Want to get into a few names that are on Florida's radar that are going to be on campus this weekend, really early in the 2026 process. I'm still kind of trying to get familiar with a lot of these names as well. So we're going to start with some names that I've already kind of checked out, fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, to the Florida Gator fans, a lot of which have been rocking with the boys for a while, and a lot of which rock with the fellas when we talk about the recruiting trail in the spring and summer months. Can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Support means the absolute world. Without further ado, let's get into it. And let's start with a 2025er. And then we're going to get into the 2026 class, a familiar name for Florida fans who follow the recruiting trail. Tennessee commit Onis Konabani going to be back on campus in Gainesville. What stands out to me here, Florida's probably looking to add one more cornerback into this 2025 class. You look at Ben Hanks, a certified stud, in my opinion. Ben Hanks is going to come in, I think, play early and often, be very good for Florida. Outside of that, maybe a little bit thin at cornerback in the 2025 cycle. This is the last name that Florida wants to push their chips in to add to their 2025 class. Him being back on campus is really good news for Florida. If you're a Florida Gator fan, you're sitting here feeling pretty confident about Florida's ability to flip this commitment. Now you look at Onis and say, really attractive kid, probably not a day one guy for Florida, which is okay because I feel pretty good about where they're at cornerback going into 2025, but the developmental upside is freaky with this kid, right? He grew up across the pond, primarily playing soccer, moves to the United States, picks up the sport of football. He's checking every single athletic box that you want, athletic trait box you want. I mean, he's long, he's physical, he's got nice long speed, runs about 11-second 100-meter dash. Boxes checked. Very smooth athlete. Now, is he developing as a pure football player still? Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably why he needs a year once he gets on campus for Florida. We talk about putting this guy kind of in the developmental pipeline for a year, taking a peek at what it looks like in 2026 and 2027. You want to bet on this kid every single day of the week. And, Florida finished with a top 10 class in the 2025 cycle. This would probably move them closer to top 8. If you're a Florida fan, you're looking at that 2025 class. Hey, we got some studs coming in that class. Now, switching our attention to the 2026 class, these are going to be some new names, but some names that I really like. Let's start with what I think might be just purely the best prospect that you see in the 2026 cycle. That is offensive tackle Emmanuel Ehancho. I think I said that name right. I practiced it a couple of times before we went live. This kid is for lack of better terms, a freak show, right? 6'6.5", 345 pounds, extremely long arms. Normally, when you see these kind of frames, these really, really big offensive linemen, you don't expect the athleticism and feet to be all that good. That's what stands out to me about this kid. One, he carries 345 exceptionally well. Like, there's not a lot of bad weight on his frame. He's pretty rocked up. Secondly, he's a phenomenal athlete, firing off the line of scrimmage. He's really good in pass protection, knows how to use his length, can climb to the second level in the run game, can move bodies off the line of scrimmage with some down blocks. There's nothing this kid cannot do. And again, the size is the first thing that jumps out. And then said, all right, what does the athlete look like? The athlete's damn good for the size. This is a guy that, and I don't say this often, probably can come in and play early for Florida. And if you're a Florida fan, you're looking at the offensive line and saying, hey, we're returning 4 out of the 5 offensive linemen from that 2024 year, but we'll probably be looking for some new contributors going into the 2026 year. This is a guy you can add as a freshman and probably be in the mix of that 2 deep immediately when he steps foot on campus. Now, this one is going to be competitive, but Florida getting him on campus early, after out of all the options he could go visit, that tells you Florida's putting themselves in a good spot with this kid, and he is extremely gifted. Next player I want to talk about, and this is one of the names that I'm looking at the most for Florida, and the Florida Gator fans who've been rocking with the fellas for a while know I've been kind of nitpicky in terms of the difference makers that Florida has had at tight end. It looks like Billy Napier is going to be calling the plays again, so I think we're going to get a lot more 12 personnel. Which again, I don't mind going 12 personnel, but if you're going to go 12 personnel, I want a little bit more difference makers within this offense at the tight end spot. Caden Protho from the state of Georgia, he would be that guy. Now at 6'6", 210, he plays essentially wide receiver at the high school rank, split out wide, big bodied wide receiver, extremely productive. The first thing you're looking for is, all right, is he going to have the weight on his frame to be an inline tight end and be physical along the line of scrimmage? Look, he's got a 6'6" frame. He's in the middle of his junior year. You can get some weight on this kid over the next couple of years before he has to play for Florida. But what he can do as a pass catcher and how good of an athlete he is with that frame, if I'm a Florida fan, we need some more juice over the middle of the field with some of these big body tight ends. Caden Protho can be that guy. Again, I think if you can get some difference makers at the tight end position, it's going to unlock this Florida offense. Caden Protho, I mean, he's a freaky athlete for that size. Going to another guy that I think is very exciting on campus right now, apparently, Naheem Burroughs from Jacksonville, Florida. 5'11", 160. He looks like he's put on a little bit of weight. I don't think he's 160 still, but he's got a slender frame. Now, he has nice long speed, right? He runs an 11-second 100-meter dash, which is dang solid, dang fast. That's not my favorite attribute he brings. Well, my favorite attribute, very similar to that Eugene Wilson kind of frame there, he is electric with the football in his hands. I mean, his short area quicks, his ability to make people miss, his ability to create separation in his route trees. There's track speed and then there's football speed. Naheem Burroughs has football speed. Yeah, it's one thing to run really fast in a straight line. I care more about what can you do changing directions. He's a smooth, athletic mover that knows how to make people miss, can create separation in his route trees. If you're Florida, you're selling, hey, Naheem Burroughs, you got a lot of the same skill sets as a guy like Trey Wilson. We're going to get you involved early, and you're a difference maker with the football in your hands. Like this kid a lot. Last one I'll talk about, Kendall Gerville from Fort Myers, Florida. Kelby Collins vibes, to be honest, when you dive into a little bit of the film. So what I mean by that is, all right, at 6'4", 265, it's a big body who's a very good athlete. Look, Kelby Collins, yes, he was a quote-unquote bust for the Florida Gators, no doubt about it. With the coaching staff changes, I feel like the problem with Kelby Collins was we didn't find a position for him and let him stick there. We spent some time out on the edge, then we kick him into the 3-tech, and the first 2 years were, just him learning 2 different positions. If you want to add a guy like Kendall Gerville, who you want to add these kind of guys, you got to make sure, what do you want to do with him? Bring him, have a plan, I guess is what I'd say. For Kelby Collins, it was like, hey, we bet on a really good athlete, but we didn't really have a good plan in terms of how we wanted to get him on the football field. If you're going to add a guy like Kendall, make sure you have a plan and pick a position for him and let him stay there. Let him develop his body into that position. And I think you'll have some success with him. Very similar kind of prospect to a guy like Kelby Collins, but a guy that hopefully with Gerald Chapman there, you got a better feel for how you want to use this kid along the line of scrimmage. Couple of overarching takeaways, and I didn't want to talk about players that I'm not too familiar with yet. A lot of line of scrimmage players, a lot of guys on the defensive line, a lot of guys on the offensive line, and I love it because you can address wide receiver in the transfer portal. You can address running back in the portal. You can address a lot of different positions pretty dang easily in the transfer portal. Addressing the line of scrimmage, you can't. It's really hard to build line of scrimmage play in the transfer portal. So why I say that is, hey, we got to make sure we're getting those kind of bodies out of the high school ranks. And it seems like Florida's really taken on that kind of mentality in this 2026 class. We'll continue to keep you guys updated. Maybe some commitments coming out of the weekend. We'll see. Obviously, we'll break them down if they come in. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Fired up to get into this 2026 class. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later.